LSU, South Carolina, it's your final preview and prediction. It's all on today's Locked on LSU. Let's go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Glad to have you aboard with us here. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We are free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please smash that like button, subscribe on your favorite podcast app on YouTube, and let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you here every single day for Locked on LSU. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Okay, I'll wrap today's episode with my final preview and a score prediction for LSU, South Carolina. Unfortunately, LSU is going to Columbia, probably down another defensive tackle after the Jacoby and Guillory injury. We'll get to that here shortly. But Brian Kelly met with reporters on Thursday night after practice, his final media availability before LSU takes off Friday to Columbia. And the first question out the chute was about a clarification on Harold Perkins. And if you were here for yesterday's episode or the previous episode, whenever you're listening or watching, Brian Kelly on the Wednesday teleconference made a comment about, he was asked specifically about Whit Weeks, the sophomore linebacker, and said, I'm paraphrasing, but said, Whit Weeks has played so well they can't justify platooning him. He's got to be on the field, and it's going to make us make some tough decisions about the linebacker position. I and everybody else read that to mean Harold Perkins is moving positions, and maybe it's in that star position. He's played Will and Sam. He's played all over the place. Now, it's going to necessitate that, especially this week, when you're playing a South Carolina offense with a 240-pound quarterback in Lenora Sellers and a former All-SEC running back and Rocket Sanders from his time at Arkansas. And what clearly South Carolina is going to try to do is run the ball against LSU and hope for coverage bust, because it's the only way they can move the ball at all, because their offense stinks. You can tell where I'm leaning in this game. But in any event, Brian Kelly, again, asked to clarify based on his comments about Whit Weeks and what that meant for Harold Perkins.
They all have to play, right? I mean, so we have to be able to be creative with our defensive structure. And, Blake understands that, and that's a good thing for us, right? I mean, I think we understand that we've got some position flexibility. Whit's played some Mike linebacker. Harold's played Will. He's played some Sam. So we've got great flexibility with both those guys. So, we just feel like, it's important that the guys that are playing their best get on the field. And so I think that kind of addresses the comments that I made relative to, keeping him on the field. Of course, he's not going to play every single play, but I think making sure that, we have the position flexibility and the utilization of not being afraid to move people around to get your best players on the field.
That was a 1-7 answer where Brian Kelly did one heck of a tap dance. I mean, he was tap dancing like Danny Kaye, right? What's the old line from Christmas Vacation? We're gonna tap. It's Bing Crosby tap dance with Danny Kaye. I'll leave out the middle part of that from Chevy Chase. But in any event, but Brian Kelly was dancing. Listen, the bottom line is when he's talking about position flexibility, he's telling you the answer, man. Yeah, look, if you need to play Perkins inside, you can. But Harold's played nickel. He's played Sam. He's played Will. He could play the star. He's moving over. He's flexible. It's no different than what you're seeing right now in the secondary. Sage Ryan has played corner for you. He's played nickel for you, but his best position is safety. But because of a variety of things, injuries, last year, just the lack of talent at cornerback, he's had to play in those positions. So 2 years ago, or Brian Kelly's first season, I should say, Sage Ryan was playing a lot of nickel because you had Greg Brooks and Joe Fouché. You had veteran SEC safety. So anyway, my point is, look, Now you could say, man, if you move Harold Perkins to the star, what do you do with Major Burns? Well, Major Burns has played safety. He could certainly play back there. The point is, you got a lot of ways to get these guys on the field. And Brian Kelly was asked specifically about running 4-3 against South Carolina. And he conceded, of course, they're going to run a lot of 4-3 against South Carolina. It makes sense. If you like, I don't want to go over anybody's head, and I don't need to go too deep inside baseball here, but like nickel, when you hear people say it's 5 defensive backs, most of you know that, but just for clarification, because I think a lot of times we talk in those terms and some people may not know, but typically you have 2 corners and 2 safeties. When you go nickel, you typically take a linebacker off the field and you put an extra defensive back on the field. And in a lot of spread offenses with the advent of the passing game and what it's been, most defenses run a base 4-2-5. Their nickel is their base because generally you're going to need an extra defensive back on the field. That's just not the case with South Carolina. Y'all, we have run through this already this week. In South Carolina, look, they're 2-0, and you credit them for that. They went on the road in the SEC against Kentucky, and they won that game 31-6. It is hard to win in the SEC. It is harder to win on the road in the SEC, and South Carolina did that. But if all you did was look at the final score, that is misleading. You know, Lenora Sellers right now on the season through 2 games, their quarterback is 20 of 37 passing for 280 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. He's completing 54% of his passes. Effectively, they had 2 long plays, a 41-yarder and a 32-yarder against Kentucky, and that was 2 coverage busts where the defense had sucked in, they had coverage busts, and they were able to hit big plays in the passing game. Like, that's about the extent of it. I mean, 73 yards of Lenora Sellers' 280 have come on 2 plays. So they're just not. This is the antithesis of Southern Cal, the other USC. Remember what USC wanted to do in that opener against LSU. LSU was determined. They were not giving up coverage bust. Do you remember? Like, LSU was determined. We are not giving up coverage bust. We're going to play 2-eye safety. We're going to make you just methodically move the ball down the field to score. And Miller Moss was up for that task. Miller Moss was 27 of 36 in that game, had a QBR of 73.9. He threw for 378, and it was methodical. They just didn't hit the big, giant chunk play throughout that game. They had the one play where Kyle Ford went for 41, and that was the short catch, missed tackle, and a run. So by and large, you just didn't see them hit deep shot after deep shot because LSU is so snake bitten by it a year ago. They're making sure that's not how they get beat. And Lenora Sellers, I'm here to tell you, is incapable of dinking and dunking South Carolina down the field. What South Carolina is going to try to do in this game is run the football with Rocket Sanders, with Lenora Sellers, and LSU is going to need to probably be in a base 4-3 where you have 3 linebackers on the field. So you might see Greg Penn, Whit Weeks, and yes, Harold Perkins, or maybe it's West Weeks, and then Perkins plays that star position, and Major Burns could kick to safety if that's what you need to do. That's what Brian Kelly's talking about there with player flexibility. And they have it with these guys because Perkins can play all over. But if you really want to affect the game with Harold Perkins, it's having him on the outside, not at middle linebacker. And I'd be surprised if he spent much of the game at all on Saturday right in the center of LSU's defense. He needs to be on the edge, and you need your stronger linebackers on the interior to help stop the run against a 240-pound quarterback and a really good running back in Rocket Sanders. I still like LSU tremendously in this game. And it's more so because I just don't think South Carolina is capable of moving the football consistently. If LSU plays sound defense and you make them go 8, 10, 12 plays down the field, they're just not capable of doing it. And I think Harold Perkins on the outside is going to be a big part of it. Okay. I'm going to step aside real quick. And when we come back, we got to talk about the interior of that defense. Talk about linebacker and obviously the other giant part of this. If you're playing a base 4-3 and you're going to be running a 6'3", 240-pound quarterback right at the heart of your defense. Well, who's at defensive tackle? Brian Kelly gave some disappointing news just days after we learned that Jacobian Guillory is lost for the season. Another big defensive tackle might not be available against South Carolina. We're going to get to that next. It's Locked on LSU, your team every day. Passion, drive, and patience. That's the formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Today's show is also brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn, when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role? LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. See, LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else. Even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, more than 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. You can post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So the disappointing news from the Nichols game, of course, is that fifth-year senior defensive tackle Jacobian Guillory lost for the season with a ruptured Achilles. The point Brian Kelly has made pretty consistently throughout this week is that they're going to rotate a lot of guys. Sean Washington, the JUCO transfer who's from New Orleans, started his career at Georgia, played JUCO last year, was one of the top JUCO defensive tackles in the country. He replaced Guillory against Nichols, and he's the guy that's going to be looked at to take up a lot of those reps this week and moving forward. But Brian Kelly elaborated a bit more on some of the guys that they're going to be counting on, what the plan is there at tackle.
Gio's a veteran. Paez, even though he's here for the first time, we've Paris Shand is going to take some snaps in there. He's a veteran and a leader for us. Look, I think we could talk about a lot of different guys in there. The most important thing is we've got a great leader in Bo Davis. And, he's helping those guys really understand how important their role is. Because we've got some young guys that are going to have to step up and play substantial and meaningful snaps for us. Whether it's Sean Washington or Ahmad Bro, Jalen Lee, there's a lot of guys that are going to have to play, and they don't have to play 30 snaps. We're talking about 12 to 15 snaps apiece, but be really effective. And a combination of all those guys, and I think Bo has done a really good job of making sure that each one of them knows they're important, and each one of their snaps has got to be really, really top-notch.
So pretty consistently, all throughout this offseason, when I've talked about LSU's defensive line, what I've said, and I don't even need to look at notes because I've said this so many times, and if you've been with us here on Locked On LSU, you've heard me say it, that LSU has veterans and they have bodies at defensive tackle. What they don't have are skins on the wall. Even with Jacobian Guillory. Jacobian Guillory had only started 8 games in his career. He played in 41, but he just hadn't been a consistent starter throughout his career. Gio Paez is a 6th-year player. You're bringing in JVR Suggs, who was a 2-year starter at Grand Valley State, now in his 3rd year. You heard Brian Kelly mention Jalen Lee, a 5th-year player who transferred in from Florida a year ago. You've got guys that are 21, 22, 23 years old, 4th, 5th, 6th-year players. You just don't have a lot of guys that have started a lot of football. So whereas at other positions, like talking about Whit Weeks at linebacker, you're going to expect him to be on the field every play almost. On the defensive line, especially a tackle on the interior, you're just going to have to rotate to keep guys fresh to get max effort for those 12 to 15 reps that Brian Kelly was talking about. Now, one of the guys he mentioned there was Paris Shand. Remember, Paris Shand transferred in a year ago from Arizona and was a really versatile player for LSU, playing both end and defensive tackle. And interestingly enough, Parashand had the opportunity to meet with reporters earlier this week, and he was asked about that, his comfort level playing on the inside, if in fact they asked him to do that. Listen to what Parashand said.
Yeah, I'm confident about playing anywhere on the line. I know everything play-wise. I know everything technique-wise, so I feel confident playing outside, inside, nose, 3, and
outside, inside, nose, 3, and play anywhere. Like, that's the benefit of a guy like Parashand, who's in his 5th year, played 3 years at Arizona. This is now his 2nd year at LSU. He played in all 13 games a year ago, had 18 tackles, 5 TFLs from his end spot, had 2 sacks, batted 2 balls down. And that was a guy that wasn't an every down player, wasn't a starter for you a year ago, but was a rotational guy that played both inside and out, depending on the look you want. We've talked about Blake Baker's Prowler package, where he gets all the rushers on the field. Well, that's Savion Jones and Parashand kicking inside. And then you got Braden Swinson and Deshaun Womack on the outside. Whitweek's in the middle. Harold Perkins playing kind of a rover spot. But the point being, Shand was playing in the middle. So that's a guy that, listen, he's not, even when you talk about a 0 technique, a nose or a 3 tech, in the gap, you're typically talking about guys that tip the scale north of 300 pounds. Shand's 6'4", 275. He's much more built like Savion Jones than he is like Jacoby and Guillory. But he's proved almost like Mekhi Wingo did a year ago that even though he's not a 300-pounder, his athleticism, his strong hands, his ability, his technique on the interior plays. It may not play for 60 snaps a game, but if you want 10, 12, 15 max effort snaps on the inside from Parashand, he can give that to you. So Shand, and then the other guy, as we mentioned, an injury that's a little disappointing, is Dominic McKinley. He's one of those guys that Brian Kelly has talked about them potentially leaning on, but on Thursday evening meeting with the media, Brian Kelly disclosed that McKinley is battling an injury that could keep him out against South Carolina.
So he's had a bit of a setback with turf toe, and it's been fairly significant. He's getting scarring down on that joint, which is allowing him to do much more. He's on our demo squad right now, and he's doing a really good job. He's a young man that we have an eye towards playing this year. But we got to get him healthy first. And, there's a lot of things going on in your first year, right? He's playing college football. He's going to class. Now he's dealing with an injury for the first time. But his future is bright. But it's going to take a little bit longer to get him there. I'd say that, it's probably another week or 2 to get this toe where, he really can be powerful with it. I think after that, we're going to accelerate him as quickly as possible and see where that takes us.
So disappointing. Look, Saints fans know all too well about this. I mean, Michael, you think about a giant guy being limited by a toe, but Michael Thomas dealt with this in New Orleans, and it's not the first time we've seen large men hampered by turf toe, which is an insanely painful injury. And when so much of your functionality relies you to be on your toes and being explosive in a 3-point stance, it's a really tough thing to deal with. But the timing couldn't be worse because you just lose Jacoby and Guillory, and you're looking for an all-hands-on-deck approach to replace those reps. And one of the guys who's 6'6", 315 pounds that you feel like you were going to be counting on is now unavailable. And Brian Kelly said it could be another week or 2. Remember, LSU plays UCLA next week. Then they're home against South Alabama before their open date in Ole Miss. In a perfect world, you'd love to get Don McKinley some run before you'd have to run him out there against Ole Miss. You'd hate for that to be his first real action. But if that's what it is, it's what it is. Here's hoping they can get him ready to go before then. Speaking of Don McKinley, Parashand in that same interview was asked about Don McKinley. Boy, he had high praise.
I think he's destined to be a monster. You know what I'm saying? Like he has it. He just needs to hone his skills and really do what needs to be done. But I think he has it, and stepping up will help him a lot. Get to where he needs to be.
One of the things, don't let that be lost. Parashand said he's going to be a monster, and he looks like it. It's very obvious. One of the things, if you were here for our fall camp reports, one of the most notable things early on was when Don McKinley was standing next to the offensive line. He was half a head taller than Emory Jones. And Emory Jones is not small, but Don McKinley at 6'6", 315 makes Emory Jones look small. Almost the way Lance Hurd did a year ago as well, when Hurd was running his second team right tackle behind Emory Jones. The point being, whenever they can start to refine, when Bo Davis can start to refine Don McKinley, you have something really special there. And I wouldn't undersell the importance of Bo Davis there. Brian Kelly talked about it, but I think that's significant. Just look a year ago when Pete Jenkins came in. LSU never became a great defense a season ago, but they were much more competent. They were a much more competent defensive line when Pete Jenkins showed up. One of the stories that they often told is that Pete Jenkins always taught you want to be able to put a playing card between helmets of the offensive lineman and the defensive lineman. And when he showed up, they were a foot and a half, 2 feet away from the offensive lineman. And I remember having lunch with Coach Pete over the summer, and we were talking about that. And he said, just think about it. That's an extra step and a half to get to where you have to go. And when you're talking about a split second between getting to a quarterback and knocking a ball loose or affecting a pass and being a step and a half short, that's the difference between a completed pass and a negative play. So just technique matters, and Bo Davis is going to be teaching that. So we'll see how much further they can come along here and how quickly they can ramp up Don McKinley. We'll maybe see Ahmad Bro this weekend if LSU's got a true platoon rotation at defensive tackle with Jacoby and Guillory out, and apparently Don McKinley unavailable as well. Okay, it's Locked on LSU. One thing left to do is give you my final preview and prediction. We'll do that next here. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Had a breaded chicken for dinner tonight, courtesy of Factor, with this like mushroom creamed spinach on it as well. I'm telling you, Factor, when I talk about him here, I'm not just reading copy points. It just so happens to be that I subscribe to Factor. If you're not familiar, Factor is no prep, no mess meals. If you're looking to meet wellness goals, they've got chef-crafted meals that are delicious. They have calorie smart options, protein plus, keto. They even have a vegan option if that's what you're into. They're fresh, never frozen. They're dietitian approved. You heat and eat in 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, look, I did an Instagram story last week. It was sort of a behind the scenes, a day in the life sort of thing. And a lot of people see, like, I'm literally recording this episode of Locked on LSU at 10 p.m. on Thursday night. That after having a full day of work as a program director, as the publisher of LouisianaSports.net, hosting my own daily 3-hour radio show, Morning Scone on my own personal YouTube channel. I mean, I do a lot. And so I don't always have a lot of time to sit and eat. So Factor is so helpful because I can grab the meal, slit the film, put it in the microwave, 2 minutes, and then I have a delicious meal ready to go that's also healthy and tastes great. You got to check it out. If you want to give yourself some time, give yourself a healthier option, instead of going through the drive-thru, ordering DoorDash and spending $15-20 on lunch, why would you do that every day, or dinner for the whole family? Just try Factor. It's delicious. It's easy. Treat yourself. There's no shopping. There's no prep. There's no cooking. There's no cleanup. It's effortless, and it tastes delicious. So you can choose from 6 different menu preferences to help you manage your calories. If you're looking to maximize protein intake, as I mentioned, vegan, if you're looking to avoid meat, or if there's just a well-balanced meal you're looking for, they got it. It's Factor. So here you go. Here's your deal. Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50. Use the code LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code LockedOnCollege50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. Again, that's factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50. Okay, I got one thing left to do, and that's to give you my final preview and prediction here of LSU and South Carolina. And I don't think this is going to be any great surprise that I'm going with LSU, but I will give you a score, and I want to tell you why I'm going to end up there. One thing that Brian Kelly was asked about on Thursday was this matchup, which is the good-on-good matchup. To me, it's the one matchup that actually is going to determine whether or not South Carolina has a chance in this game. Listen, I understand South Carolina just went on the road and beat Kentucky, and we have this perception in our brain of what Kentucky is because of what they have been. under Mark Stoops, which is a respectable football program, which hasn't always been the case for Kentucky. But Brock Vandagriff, the Georgia transfer at quarterback, has been atrocious. There's no other way around it to say it. Brock Vandagriff has been awful. They managed 6 points against South Carolina. Vandagriff was 3 of 10. This is an SEC quarterback, by the way. He was 3 of 10 for 30 yards passing and an interception before he got benched. And yes, we could absolutely say that South Carolina's defense played a big part in that. But truthfully, the week before, Kentucky played Southern Miss, and it wasn't like that was dramatically better. You know, Vandagriff against Southern Miss was just 12 of 18. He did have 3 touchdowns and another pick, but my goodness, y'all, we're not supposed to do the comparative analysis here. You know, the transitive property doesn't really work. Well, A beat B, B beat C, so A should beat C. Like, you know, but there are things you can extrapolate, even though this is a small sample size. And I've told y'all this, and I'm going to say it again. I was sitting at the Park MGM Sportsbook the Saturday before LSU played USC, the first full Saturday of college football. And because the Penn State game against West Virginia was in a rain delay and Florida and Miami hadn't started yet, we're sitting there watching South Carolina against Old Dominion. And I watched Lenoris Sellers throw up on himself. That was a 23-19 win for South Carolina. And Old Dominion fumbled twice inside their own 10-yard line, which gave South Carolina a short field. It's the only reason Carolina put up the 2 touchdowns they did. Sellers in that game was 10 of 23 for 114 yards. 10 of 23 for 114. They just don't have weapons offensively. They just don't. And against Kentucky, you say, well, they scored 31 points. They did. And Sellers was 10 of 14 for 166, 2 touchdowns and a pick. And I'm here to tell you, of that 266, 73 of it were on 2 plays where there were coverage busts. And one of them resulted in a touchdown. And then when Brock Vandagriff was benched and the backup came in, they threw a pick 6 at the end of the game, which netted South Carolina its final points of the game. I'm just here to tell you, South Carolina is a terrible offensive football team. And if LSU struggles defensively in this game, when we're back here doing our post-game show, and I'm recapping this game on Sunday, I am going to dramatically alter my expectation for this LSU football season if they can't go to Columbia, South Carolina, and defend that offense. I watched LSU, this defense, despite what fans are saying, despite the fan narrative and what they faced last week against Nichols, I've told y'all where I stand on that. Complete letdown spot. 6 days. You fly home from Vegas. It's Monday at 5 a.m. You got to turn around, practice on Tuesday. You're getting ready for an FCS school that's playing out. A good team, by the way, in the FCS. It's playing outside of their mind, and they put together 2 long drives in the first half. Other than that, didn't bupkis. Now you've had a week to heal, to prepare. You're going on the road. Game day is going to be there. It's going to be 80,000 people cheering against you. LSU better be sky high for this. And the same defense that held Lincoln Riley's offense to 20 points through the first 59 minutes and 52 seconds of that ball game should absolutely be able to go and not commit coverage busts against South Carolina and not give up big plays against an offense that's void of real legit game-breaking talent. And a freshman quarterback in Lenoris Sellers who is still feeling his way. LSU's defense should be fine. And the flip side of that is there is one matchup in this game. One. There is one matchup where South Carolina could potentially impact and affect LSU, and it's their defensive ends. Through 2 games, they got 10 sacks. They got a Georgia Tech transfer and a true freshman who are both awesome, and they've got 10 sacks in 2 games. Meanwhile, LSU hasn't allowed a sack yet in this ballgame. And Brian Kelly's keenly aware that's the matchup to watch.
I think we've talked about their 2 ends, outstanding defensive ends. They're elite pass rushers in the SEC, but that's not new to our 2 tackles. they're veterans in this league. They know that it's going to be a challenge for them. And look, it doesn't come down sometimes just to the 2 tackles, right? It's the pressures inside. And I think, Nuss has done a nice job of setting our protections and recognizing it. And, I don't know, he's gotten knocked down a couple of times. I don't know if we've given up a sack, and he's going to get the ball out of his hands pretty quick.
Okay. South Carolina's got 2 good ends. They've got 2 good interior players as well. Alex Huntley, who we talked to at SEC Football Media Days, and Tonka Hemingway. They're good on the defensive line. Legit good. They're not good anywhere else. They're good on the defensive line. But LSU's great on its offensive line, especially at tackle and pass protection. If those tackles keep Garrett Nussmeier upright, South Carolina does not have the athletes to cover LSU's skill guys. And LSU should be able to move the ball and score. Y'all, I think I know, and this is the one thing that has given me pause all week, is that there is a lot of sharp money that the professional gamblers, money is coming in on South Carolina. You've seen that line go from 8 all the way down to 7.5 to 7 to 6.5, and it could drop even further before kickoff. I just don't see it. I can't get there on, like, when LSU played South Carolina, Southern Cal, I picked LSU to win. But my contention was that was going to be a 1-score game late in the fourth quarter, and I thought LSU's offensive line was good enough to salt that game away, either drive for the game-winning field goal or run out the clock. And ultimately, it didn't work out that way. USC got the ball late. They're the one that made the play late. But the game played out kind of like I thought it would. I went heavy. I told you, heavy on the under. 1-score game late in the fourth quarter. It's how it played out. This one, maybe we'll be sitting here on Sunday and I'll be dead wrong. Maybe LSU's going to Columbia, South Carolina, and they're going to be in the fight of their lives. But I cannot get there. I think LSU wins this game 31-13. I don't think it's close. I think LSU's better athletically. I think they're better coached. They got the better quarterback. They have everything except the fact that they got to go on the road in this ball game. If LSU protects the ball and they keep Nussmeier upright, LSU walks through this game, sets themselves up for UCLA next week, South Alabama, then an open date before Ole Miss comes in, and that's going to be your season right there. For all intents and purposes, if you're thinking about playoffs, that's going to be what it's all about right there. I think LSU goes to Columbia, South Carolina, and walks through those Gamecocks. 31-13. I think the Tigers win it. Of course, we'll be back here to talk about it on Sunday. But remember, in the meantime, if you're new, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video, and let a friend know that if they love the Tigers. We got you here every single day for Locked on LSU, your team every day.